Just 1 minute ago, an unexpected message from Prince William sent shockwaves through Britain. A silent refusal, a quiet but powerful no delivered straight to the heart of Prime Minister Keir Starmer's office. And now Westminster is spiralling into panic. What was supposed to be a routine royal consultation has exploded into a moment that insiders say could drag the country toward a constitutional showdown unlike anything seen in decades. And as the truth leaks out, piece by piece, Britain stands still, waiting to understand how everything suddenly went so wrong. The first signs of trouble began early this morning, long before the public had any idea something enormous was unfolding behind closed doors. Senior advisors in Downing Street were already scrambling, whispering among themselves as urgent messages arrived from Kensington Palace. At first, no one believed it. Prince William had reportedly responded to the Prime Minister with a firm rejection. Not loud, not angry, but unmistakably clear. A refusal that cut through the usual formalities of royal government communication and left officials stunned. This was not routine. This was not expected. This was something that could shift the balance of power in ways the government was absolutely not prepared for. By mid-morning, tension had spread across Whitehall like a tightening rope. Staffers who normally moved with confidence were suddenly frozen in uncertainty, glancing nervously at one another as rumours circulated at lightning speed. It wasn't just a disagreement. It wasn't a minor hesitation. Insiders described the message from Prince William as a decisive no, a direct pushback to something Starmer had urgently requested. The question no one could answer was simple yet terrifying. Why would the future king intervene now, at this moment, in this way? And what exactly had Starmer asked for that provoked such a response? The story began to unravel when a senior source, speaking only under strict anonymity, revealed that Starmer had been preparing to introduce a controversial measure requiring symbolic royal approval. Something that would normally be a formality, rubber-stamped, unseen, unnoticed by the wider public. But this time, Prince William refused, not out of rebellion, not out of politics, but out of principle. At least, that's what the palace insiders insisted. The Prime Minister, caught completely off guard, had expected quick agreement. Instead, he received the one message no leader wants to hear, a calm, deeply considered rejection from the very person expected to uphold unity in times of uncertainty. As the minutes passed, the shock inside Downing Street escalated into something far more serious. Constitutional lawyers were summoned. Senior cabinet members halted their schedules. A series of urgent phone calls rushed across London, each one more frantic than the last. The mood shifted from confusion to fear as experts warned that a direct refusal by the heir to the throne, even in symbolic matters, could destabilise the fragile balance between the monarchy and the government. This was territory no advisor wanted to tread. It was rare. It was dangerous. And above all, it was unpredictable. Sources close to Starmer described him as stunned, pacing in silence as he absorbed the implications. A refusal from Prince William did not just block a decision. It raised questions about authority, responsibility, and the limits of political power. For a Prime Minister already facing growing pressure inside and outside Parliament, this unexpected royal resistance struck at the core of his leadership. The risk was enormous. If the disagreement leaked, and leaks in Westminster are inevitable, the public reaction could spiral out of control, feeding speculation, anger, and uncertainty across the country. By early afternoon, that fear became reality. Word slipped out. A discreet conversation overheard by the wrong person, a phone call repeated in confidence and then repeated again without it. Suddenly, journalists began asking questions neither Downing Street nor the palace were ready to answer. The whisper became a rumour, the rumour became a headline, and the headline became a national alarm. Prince William pushes back. Royal refusal shocks government. Crisis brewing inside Westminster. The media storm erupted with full force and there was no pulling it back. Inside the palace, officials held their ground, offering only cold, carefully prepared statements, refusing to reveal anything beyond routine protocol. But the silence itself revealed everything. It signalled that something was happening, something real, something serious, something neither side could simply sweep away. And so Britain found itself perched on the edge of a moment that could redefine the boundaries of royal influence and governmental power. A storm was forming, and the first crack of thunder had already been heard. As the situation intensified, the atmosphere in Westminster grew heavier, almost suffocating. The corridors that usually buzzed with controlled political energy now felt tense, like the calm before a violent storm. Ministers shuffled between emergency briefings, trying to understand how a single message from Prince William had turned into a national dilemma. What had been expected to remain a quiet exchange between the future king and the Prime Minister was now on the verge of becoming a full-scale constitutional dispute. Every department, from the Cabinet Office to the Home Office, was suddenly on edge, each one awaiting clarity that simply wasn't coming. The silence from both sides was fueling more speculation, pushing the crisis deeper by the hour. Behind closed doors, senior advisors attempted to reconstruct the chain of events, but each version only raised more questions. Why had Prince William taken such a firm position? What exactly was in the proposal sent from Starmer's office? Why was the response so swift and so decisive? Some argued that William was aiming to protect the neutrality of the monarchy. Others insisted that the Prime Minister had overstepped, pushing for something that blurred boundaries that were never meant to be touched. No one knew the full truth, but everyone sensed that the stakes had grown larger than either side anticipated. The balance between tradition and political authority, a balance usually maintained through quiet coordination, now felt dangerously unstable. Inside the palace, the mood was far from calm, although the official line remained firm. No comment, no details, no public explanation. Trusted insiders whispered of a deep concern. Prince William, known for his measured approach, had not acted impulsively. Those close to him believed the refusal stemmed from careful reflection, a desire to protect the institution he will one day lead. But even they admitted the timing could not have been worse. Britain was already dealing with economic strain, political divisions, and a public weary of constant upheaval. For the monarchy to become entangled, even indirectly, in governmental drama was the last thing that the country needed. Yet here they were, walking a tightrope with no margin for error. Meanwhile, Downing Street faced internal fractures. Not all cabinet members agreed with Starmer's original request to the palace. Some quietly questioned the wisdom behind it, worrying that pushing the heir to the throne into a politically sensitive corner had been a grave mistake. Others defended the Prime Minister, arguing that his decision had been necessary, perhaps even urgent, given the circumstances surrounding the undisclosed measure. But this private disagreement only deepened the sense of crisis, amplifying the uncertainty. Each passing moment without resolution increased the likelihood of a public confrontation, something neither institution wanted but could no longer fully avoid. Outside government buildings, the media frenzy was rapidly escalating. Reporters camped outside gates, cameras pointed at every car entering Downing Street, microphones ready for any slip of information. Commentators debated constitutional precedents, legal experts argued over possible outcomes, and political opponents seized the moment to question Starmer's judgment. This wasn't just a news cycle. It was a national spectacle, a story gripping the country with a mixture of fascination and dread. The idea of a future king refusing the sitting prime minister, and even symbolically, pushed the public imagination into overdrive. And each unanswered question only fanned the flames. By late afternoon, the crisis had entered a new phase. Legal teams were drafting contingency documents, exploring scenarios no one thought they would need to consider. Could the government proceed without royal acknowledgement? Could the palace maintain its refusal if public pressure increased? What precedent would this set for future prime ministers, future monarchs? The uncertainty was enormous. No one wanted to spark a constitutional clash, but no simple solution seemed within reach. Both sides were locked in a delicate standoff, neither willing to bend, neither able to advance without risking consequences that would ripple across the nation. Amid the chaos, there was one troubling reality neither side could ignore. The public was beginning to take sides. Social media platforms exploded with opinions, theories and accusations. Some praised Prince William for standing firm, portraying him as a guardian of principle. Others accused Starmer of overreaching, warning that his actions threatened the stability of the country. At the same time, strong voices emerged in his defence, arguing that the elected government must not be hindered by royal hesitation. This divide, growing sharper by the minute, added a dangerous layer to the unfolding crisis. A constitutional disagreement was one thing, but a public split between the monarchy and the government was something far more volatile. And as night approached, both Downing Street and Kensington Palace found themselves trapped in a storm that neither had chosen and neither could fully control. One unexpected refusal had unleashed a chain reaction, pushing the nation toward a moment of reckoning. What awaited Britain in the next 24 hours remained unknown, but one thing was becoming painfully clear. This crisis was far from over, and the next move could determine the future of the monarchy, the government, and the fragile balance between them. As dawn approached the following day, the crisis had evolved from a political disturbance into a looming national drama that no one could escape. The streets of London were filled with a quiet tension, a sense that the country was holding its breath, waiting for clarity that still had not come. Newspapers released special early editions splashed with bold headlines suggesting power struggles and constitutional uncertainty. Radio broadcasts opened with urgent voices analysing every rumour, every whisper that had escaped Westminster the night before. It was as if the entire nation had turned into a single audience watching a political thriller unfold in real time, unsure whether the next chapter would calm the storm or escalate it into something irreversible. Inside Downing Street, exhaustion had set in. Senior officials, many of whom had barely slept, now faced the grim reality that the situation had become far more unstable than they predicted. For the first time, internal memos acknowledged the possibility that Prince William might stand firm, refusing to reconsider his position. This prospect sent shockwaves through the Prime Minister's inner circle. A refusal from the future king was not simply a symbolic disagreement. It was a message that carried weight, tradition and centuries of royal precedent behind it. Starmer, already under mounting political pressure, understood that this moment could define not only his leadership but his legacy. Whether he pushed forward or stepped back, history would remember the consequences. Tension built as a select group of constitutional scholars was brought into Downing Street for an emergency consultation. Their analysis was sobering. They explained that while the monarchy's role was largely ceremonial, there existed grey areas, rare but significant, where the future king's stance could influence public confidence in the government. This was one of those moments. If Starmer chose to bypass the monarchy's hesitation, it might ignite claims of governmental overreach. But if he withdrew his proposal, it could be seen as an admission of weakness, something his opponents would seize upon immediately. The room fell into heavy silence as the gravity of the choice settled onto the table. Meanwhile, at Kensington Palace, the mood was equally serious. Advisors close to Prince William were deep in discussion, carefully reviewing the potential ripple effects of his refusal. They understood the public perception of a future monarch stepping into the path of a sitting prime minister, even unintentionally, could be perilous. While William had acted out of principle, a decision meant to protect the monarchy's neutrality, the reaction had been far larger than anyone expected. Some palace officials quietly debated whether a clarification should be issued, a statement reassuring the nation that there was no conflict between the Crown and the government. But others warned that any statement could be misinterpreted as political commentary, something the monarchy must avoid at all costs. In such a delicate situation, even silence had become a message. Outside the royal walls, public opinion had begun to split into distinct camps. On one side were those who viewed Prince William as a stabilising force, someone stepping in to prevent political overreach. On the other side were citizens who believed the monarchy should remain completely neutral, arguing that any form of refusal, even symbolic, risked undermining democracy. This polarisation, amplified by relentless media coverage, fed a growing sense of national unease. Commentators called it a quiet crisis, one happening without protests or clashes, unfolding instead through tense statements, restrained silence, and a growing fear that one wrong move could ignite a constitutional firestorm. Back at Westminster, Starmer finally convened a private meeting with his closest advisers, determined to find a path forward. As he listened to their differing counsel, he knew that staying still was no longer an option. The crisis had gained its own momentum, rolling forward with or without government action. His advisers presented him with two choices: negotiate quietly with Kensington Palace in hopes of softening the refusal, or prepare to move ahead and risk a national confrontation. Neither option felt safe, but the clock was ticking and public pressure was mounting. The weight of the decision pressed on him heavier with each passing moment. Complicating matters further, a newly leaked document, origin unknown, began circulating among political journalists. The document allegedly outlined details of the proposal that Prince William had rejected. Whether authentic or not, it ignited a fresh explosion of speculation. Headlines questioned the government's intentions. Analysts debated possible motives. The leak forced Starmer's team into frantic damage control, issuing carefully worded statements without actually confirming or denying the documents. The ambiguity only intensified the suspense, leaving the public wondering what the government was trying to achieve and why the future king had felt compelled to intervene. As the day pressed on, something became increasingly clear. This crisis had grown beyond the control of any single institution. It was no longer simply a disagreement between the government and the future monarch. It had become a test of Britain's constitutional balance, a moment that challenged assumptions many thought were unshakable. The question now facing the nation was no longer what happened, but what comes next. And as the sun began to fall over London, the answer to that question seemed more uncertain than ever. As night settled over Britain, the crisis reached a point where silence could no longer contain the pressure building within both institutions. The uncertainty had seeped into every corner of public life. From Parliament to living rooms across the country, commentators on late-night broadcast warned that the standoff could not continue without consequences. If the government and the future king remained locked in quiet opposition, the situation could deepen into a constitutional dilemma unseen in modern history. People were no longer asking whether this was serious. They were now questioning how far it would go and what the final outcome might mean for the nation's future. Inside Downing Street, tension had escalated to a breaking point. Keir Starmer, exhausted yet determined, reviewed reports detailing the mounting pressure on his leadership. His advisers urged caution, reminding him that escalation would only expose the fragility of the relationship between the government and the monarchy. But there were others, political strategists, who believed the moment offered a chance to assert authority and reclaim control of the narrative. They argued that stepping back now would be interpreted as surrender, creating a dangerous precedent for future governments. Their words weighed heavily on Starmer, forcing him to confront the reality that any path he chose would shape the nation's perception of his strength. Meanwhile, whispers from Kensington Palace hinted at escalating internal concern. Though Prince William had acted from principle, the outcome had spiralled beyond what any member of the royal household anticipated. Senior advisers debated issuing a carefully phrased clarification, a statement meant to reaffirm the monarchy's neutrality without stepping into the political arena. But even the slightest misstep could be seized upon by critics, potentially deepening the perception of royal interference. The palace understood that their silence was contributing to the crisis, yet breaking that silence risked igniting an entirely different storm. This delicate balancing act placed immense strain on every decision maker behind those historic walls. Public reaction had grown increasingly intense. Social media had splintered into factions, each claiming to defend the true interests of the nation. Pro-monarchy voices insisted Prince William had acted responsibly, shielding the country from unchecked political ambition. Pro-government supporters countered that democracy should never hinge on royal approval.